Oh, how the mighty have fallen, and I don't mean John and I. We're doing okay, but the Bengals, Joe Burrow, Zach Taylor and company. Not only did they suffer another epic collapse of a loss on Sunday against the Bills, a game they looked to have in hand late, but there were some headlines that came across the wire on Monday afternoon that just make things a little bit more frustrating after a frustrating loss. I'm Anthony. He's John. John, what's up, buddy? How you doing?
When it rains, it pours. Am I right?
Yeah. Even out here in 70-degree Southern California, it's pouring today.
Yeah, I mean, the last week has been filled with nothing but optimism about how it's going to be the same thing as last year. Only this time, the Bengals are going to get into the playoffs, and maybe there's some relief to all that being immediately snapped without the anticipation of the next 4 weeks. But at the same time, not good. Not good.
We're going to talk about the game. We're going to talk about the playoff picture because we'll talk about it. I mean, who's even good right now? I don't even know who's good right now. But at any rate, we'll talk about that. And, of course, the roster news that came across the wire and what that may mean long-term for the Bengals going forward. Again, I'm Anthony. He is John. This is the Orange and Black Insider Bengals podcast. I probably should have mentioned that at the top of the show. The name of the show would have helped. And we are part of the Believe Podcast Network and the Believe in Cincy podcast channel. Go get all of our episodes on the Believe in Cincy podcast channel from a handful of different shows that, hey, we think they're pretty great. So go get those through your favorite audio streamer if you like the video side of things. Check out our YouTube channel, do the like, subscribe, all that kind of stuff. And as always, we are brought to you by FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. Boy, oh boy, 5.5 was the line in this one, John, and end result was 5 points. So make of that what you will. But FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. Please gamble responsibly and only in areas where allowed. And of course, FOCO, the fans only company, bringing you exclusive lines of Cincinnati Bengals merchandise that you can't find anywhere else. So go treat the Bengal fan in your life for the holiday season at FOCO. Both of those links to our great sponsors are pinned in the show description. So check those out. Tell them we sent you, or I guess you don't have to. You can just go and do your thing, but we're appreciative of the partnerships with FanDuel and FOCO. Okay, John, another one where the Bengals had it in hand. Another one, what was it, 11 points with about half of the fourth quarter to go at one point. You just felt like, okay, the defense is stumbling a little bit, but Burrow just kept making plays. This, it just seemed like, okay, they're back. They're back. It's going to be probably tighter and more points scored than you would have wanted, but it did not turn out that way. The Cincinnati Bengals, this was my biggest problem, I guess, with the end result, John, is it's now their most clutch player came up unclutch, really, and Joe Burrow in this game with 2 interceptions. Granted, 4 great touchdowns. He's playing phenomenal back so quickly from injury, but these 2 plays, you can question the play calls or if Burrow checked to those or what have you, based on the fact that you're kind of trying to milk a lead and then you're throwing these passes, trying to force the ball to chase, that sort of thing. Regardless, 2 interceptions, one of which was a pick 6. And the Bengals somehow lose a game that they had well in hand into the fourth quarter.
And that's how you lose a game like that when you have two back-breaking interceptions. I think there's room to argue the fault or the cause of both of them. At the end of the day, we talked a little bit about how Josh Allen is usually the quarterback that will put the ball in the harm's way,
Mm-hmm.
and it
Mm-hmm.
ended up being the other quarterback that put the ball in the harm's way. And that play, that interception that was returned for a touchdown, in which it clearly looked like Burrow never had a good grip on the ball, and he tried to just lob it to
I
Jamar
just
Chase, who had
yeah.
acres of space in front of him. Christian Benford made a phenomenal play, and it was the most game-changing play in terms of win probability adjusted in like the history of next gen stats, which it's just indicative of how the game just turned up upside down. And obviously the very next play being another interception that led to another
Back to back.
score. Like that's just how that happens, right? So I think for the first time in a while, the Bengals lose in a very heartbreaking, chaotic, and embarrassing way, but you don't have the blame just pinned in one specific area or
No, yeah.
person. Yeah, like
Yeah.
I think we've done that in the past, and typically it's not because of the mistakes that Burrow made. And again, I think overall you could definitely say that Burrow provided a lot more positive value in this game than the
Yep.
two mistakes, but you can't ignore the two mistakes and how much of an impact that had on this game. We knew that the Bengals defense was going to have its troubles against an offense that consistently puts up a lot of points at home. I think maybe there was some belief that, oh, because it's snowing again and because they did well in the snow last time in Buffalo, that the Bills didn't have a chance. And that's just the variance of playing in those conditions, right? Sometimes it's your day, sometimes it's not. When Josh Allen has a full head of steam, there's no quarterback spy on him on 3rd and 15 in the snow. I mean, like, it's just
Inexplicable. Yeah.
exactly right. So, yeah, a pretty bad performance defensively for the second half that led to a lot of those drives in the league kind of dwindling, and just a perfect storm for Buffalo to come back and take a game that you just don't see that type of lead being blown by these Bengals under this head coach and with this quarterback under center. And yeah, it's just the worst possible scenario.
And we've seen a couple of them now. I mean, granted, a couple of them were with Joe Flacco under center, so Burrow not in there, but we've seen this a couple of times this season alone. And I preface the thing by saying, one of the most maddening things is, the most clutch player on the team came up with a couple of unclutch plays. But like you said, there were a myriad of factors that led to this. And we kind of knew that this was going to be, we said, the Bengals, maybe if they won, it would have been a touchdown or so, or if they lost, it would have been a field goal or so. We were kind of close in that regard, depending on how you look at it. But so we knew it was going to be, a hard fought game, two really good quarterbacks, and they both played well, obviously, but, some mistakes late, collapses late by the defense. It's just kind of broken record a little bit. And the other thing that, like you said, was maddening is, again, that what was it, 3rd and 15. And like you said, there's no spy, there's nothing there. You're so hyper convinced that Josh Allen is going to, try and toss a long one. Maybe you're also convinced that they're going to try and get a pass interference penalty, that sort of thing. But you're so hyper fixated on that you just, I don't know what was going through the mind there, but the defense definitely took a step back. And I don't really know what more. I mean, there's a lot more to say about it, but it's just, sometimes you wonder how things turned so fast in a span of a couple of plays, and that's exactly what happened in this game. I just now I wonder what the Bengals' future holds. We'll talk about playoff picture and that sort of thing, but there's a lot of chaos in this organization right now, and on this roster. There's a lot of different things happening that are not trending towards a positive direction.
No, and I think I in a weird way, like it seems like losing this game opened up like a new reality. It just felt like the Bengals were going to find a way to win this one, as they typically do in these scenarios when they're counted out as big underdogs going up against a good team and a good quarterback. It's typically a game that the Bengals win, and you could potentially push these problems further into the future and all the implications with that. But for as unique of a loss as this was, it had some very familiar factors to it as well. I think Burrow in general, like there was a time I think right before halftime where the ball wasn't really coming out of his hands the right way. Maybe the weather had something to do with that, but
Yeah.
the offense stalled a little bit too in the beginning of the second half. And on defense, Dawson Knox, Dalton Kincaid, even Jackson Haas with his one touchdown
Yep.
eviscerated this defense. The Bengals defense on average is giving up 100 yards a game to tight ends. It's like I think Joe Goodberry put it perfectly. They're giving up essentially a triple crown performance every single week to this position group, and in this case, it happened to be multiple players here. And it's the same issues we're seeing on defense, where the middle of the field, there's no communication, there's no awareness of where these routes are coming from, and then not looking back to the ball, and all of a sudden, the ball's in Khalil Shakir's hands, and Josh Allen throws a dart there. So it's a lot of very similar issues that compounded into, again, one of the most frustrating losses in this tenure of Bengals football. And I think you kind of saw how Burrow and Zach both reacted to it, and just the feeling of, yeah, this confirms not only a losing season, but it all but confirms that they probably aren't going to be in the playoffs, barring a miracle. And there could be definitely be ramifications to all of that.
Deflation is definitely what I would say with this, with what I saw in the aftermath of this game from the leadership on this team. I mean, it's funny, whatever you call it, a triple crown, a trifecta, whatever. I mean, you had a touchdown. Didn't you have a 2-point conversion caught by a tight end as well? And then, the big plays, like long gains by tight ends. So, I mean, they were doing a little bit of everything. John, this has been a long-standing problem with the Bengals in terms of, and I can go back to Marvin Lewis, and this has been a long-standing problem. And so, when you talk about personnel versus scheme, who's on the roster and what are you running out there, what are you calling, I kind of continue to go back to, if this is a long-running problem, you have to say the scheme on this, right? Like, what you are not. I guess it's chicken or the egg, right? Like, you're not drafting because of your scheme. You're not drafting a specific player that could specifically fill a role to be a problem for tight ends. And granted, tight ends are just a major problem for opposing defenses across the league anyway. There are a lot of really athletic, big guys at that position. But for a long time, it's like, do you draft the guy and kind of switch up your scheme a little bit, or do you switch up the scheme? I don't know, but this has been a problem way too long for the Bengals.
It was a problem because the Bengals have had to get really creative in terms of working around their linebacker deficiencies. Like, they've obviously had some good players at the position. Vontaze Burfict, notably, he was never that good in coverage, though. They always had to have someone next to him to kind of handle those duties, and that was a problem consistently in the Marvin Lewis era. And it was frustrating because he was a former linebackers coach and he couldn't really develop the position properly. The few times in which the position wasn't really a problem with this team, freaking went to a Super Bowl and an AFC Championship. Like, when Logan Wilson and Jermaine Pryor were out there, the middle of the field was pretty much taken care of. And like you said, Trey Flowers was designated to kind of come down to the line of scrimmage, take on tight ends one-on-one. And there was like a 2 to 3 year span in which, it wasn't necessarily a problem anymore. Now you have two rookies out there who, God, like when Zach was asked about like how did Demetrius and Barrett Carter get better, it's like, oh, I think they're doing all they can, just gaining experience and everything like that. Okay, dude, like, they're not good right now, and it's a major liability to your defense, and that's a problem. And to just throw your hands up and say they need to get more experience, this was your plan to have these guys out there. Like, you traded away Logan Wilson to start Barrett Carter, and you drafted Demetrius Knight Jr. in the second round to have him start, and they're terrible. Like, let's be honest, they're bad in coverage, and they're missing tackles, and they're taking bad angles, and the middle of the field is vacant because of it, and there's no solution in sight. So the linebacker position in the early 2020s of this decade, it was fine. It was stable. And then the gradual decline of both Pratt and Wilson in this defense, and obviously with the new defense taking over, it's completely made the position a liability again. And that's why you're seeing a problem that's been 20 plus years in the making rise again.
That's a great point, because look, if we were going to be sold on the fact this offseason, we being, people who cover the team, the fans, everybody, if we were going to be sold on the fact that, hey, these guys are going to start early, there's going to be some growing pains, let's just ride through it, the expectations would have been different. But like you said, John, this entire offseason plan had been to overhaul the linebacker group, to overhaul the defensive coaching staff, to overhaul other elements that they're trying to do there. And that was going to be the immediate cure-all. At least that's how it was presented, right? The coaching changes, yeah, you'll have some rookie bumps here and there. The coaching changes, you did still have Logan Wilson for the first part of the season. And, with that, you can groom these younger linebackers, get them some time, but, still, mix in other guys, Oren Burks, etc. And now they've been thrown, to the wolves, so to speak. And it's like they're selling what we're seeing is a different product than what was being sold or told to us by the team and by its leadership this offseason. It was all going to be, hey, this is going to be a quick fix. These are the problems. We've addressed them. We addressed it in the draft. I think they did kind of bare minimum free agency personally. And then the coaching deal, that was going to be the big cure-all. And here we are again. Someone wrote here, and it was a super chat. Thank you at MB34012. Joe's starting to get tired of dropping 30 plus, meaning points, and losing. And then he mentions a couple of defensive head coaches maybe to come in there. Yes. I mean, how could you not be exasperated as Joe Burrow, as Joe Flacco, dropping 30 plus and continuing to see loss after loss and epic. It was 11 points in the fourth quarter. You had this lead at that point. You're just milk clock mode and go. And I don't know. I just feel, I don't want to say like everybody's been swindled by the Bengals in their offseason plan. Maybe they thought this would work, but what we are seeing work more immediately. But what we're seeing, that is most definitely not the case.
You took the comment down, but the last sentence of the comment caught my eye. This offseason, assuming the upcoming offseason, is biggest in franchise history. No, I'm not doing this again. We just had the biggest offseason in franchise history. And you know what happened in the biggest offseason in franchise history? They blew it. That's how you get 4-9. Like there's no other way around that. Yes, it sucks that the quarterback was hurt for 8 or 9 weeks. You got another quarterback in there, and for the majority of his tenure, he was pretty damn good. You know what sucked? The defense. The defense said, let's run it back with new coaching. That was their plan in the offseason, the biggest offseason in franchise history, and the best player of that defense was treated like crap for the majority of the offseason. He wasn't there to prepare, and now we're going to talk about him later, but he's not going to be there for the rest of the season. So that was the biggest offseason in franchise history. Everything else is going to be a little bit lower than that because he already failed.
But MB34012, we still thank you for your super chat.
Yes.
Regardless. No, but it's just, it continues to be a bit inexplicable for the Bengals and how this keeps happening. Zach Taylor took the podium today for a press conference, and he just looks exhausted, exasperated. And with that, John, I don't want to totally pivot. We'll kind of circle back to the Bills game when we talk about playoff picture and stuff. But to that point, part of the exhaustion has to be with Jermaine Burton. Going into this, obviously, we knew all the issues coming into the draft when the Bengals selected him. We knew some of what was happening last year where he could barely see the field. Did he play a down of football this year? I don't think he did. And lo and behold, apparently he was deactivated Saturday and then or suspended for the game or vice versa, whatever order that came in, suspended for the game. So at that, I don't know what that does for an NFL team's psyche, especially when it's a player you haven't been relying upon anyway. Depending on the situation, which we don't know much about, they are keeping whatever happened prior to this game very close to the vest. But that's a distraction. It's a distraction going into a big game to save your season, that sort of thing. Jermaine Burton on Monday was waived. And so after being a third-round pick in 2024, he ends with a handful of catches and 100 yards to his name. And that's about it. So the first part of this roster news is that Jermaine Burton was waived by the Bengals on Monday.
Everyone expected this to happen in the offseason, and I think when the Bengals realized what was happening over the weekend, he didn't make the trip to Buffalo, and that's a pretty big hint as to why he was suspended. It was the final straw. Like, there's no other way to look at it other than that. He was already on extremely thin ice entering the season. He didn't earn back any of the trust that he lost as a rookie when he didn't show up to a walkthrough, when he had an off-field incident that kept him at home for the season finale. Both those games, the Bengals won. So, they were distractions last year, but the team overcame them. And I don't think, obviously, what happened with Burton had a huge impact on this game. But you're right, it's cumulative and it builds up, and it's just this guy has all the talent in the world and he has all the resources in the world around him, and he can't put it together. He can't be left to his own devices to make the most out of his situation, and that's why a good amount, if not the majority of the blame here, lies on the individual in Burton, who is, at the end of the day, he's a grown person and he's been dealt a lot of responsibility, but he's not unique necessarily to this position. Other rookies and other second-year players are tasked with just keeping up with on your day-to-day and making sure that you're in the best possible situation. But the Bengals knew going into this that there were issues. There were issues that kept him from being drafted, probably where his talent would have allowed him to be drafted. And it just seems like ever since then, they haven't taken the necessary steps to try to mitigate the risk that they were taking on as much as possible. They just kind of left him to do what he needed to do. And they're like, oh, this guy is way better than the third-round pick. We're going to take him and we're going to bang our armrest and be excited about it. Mm-hmm. And nothing happened out of it. They just assumed that all of his problems would go away and that he would get the guidance that he needed without, I'm assuming, clearly whatever they did to help him wasn't enough, which is why they are definitely still involved in the blame game here, because they stuck their neck out for him. And when you do that and you take on someone that has these issues, you have to put forth some form of an effort to try to help him out. And clearly the help wasn't enough. And they're just cutting the losses now because this was the final straw. So completely failed experiment, if you will. And I hope for Jermaine's sake that he has his head on straight, and wherever he goes now, whether or not he still plays in the NFL, I can't imagine another team is going to give him an opportunity right at this moment, especially with that contract. He's probably going to clear waivers and maybe join another team in the offseason. But whatever happens with him, I hope all is well with him and his psyche.
So a couple of things. When you say, because I to be quite honest, I lack clarity on this. And one of the, you mentioned he didn't make the trip to Buffalo. Was that, because again, there's very little details about it. And I don't want to really dive into, especially, I don't know if he is struggling, with some, emotional health issues or what have you. But does that, he just no-showed making on his own, or the team said stay home, or I don't, that's where I'm going. What happened here? Did he just miss the flight? I don't know what happened. And I guess when you long run, it doesn't really matter. Like you said, it's a cumulative thing. There are just a number of incidents, and to the Bengals' credit, they haven't aired a lot of the dirty laundry about that. They just kind of tried to protect him and just said, we're working with him. I do want to tell our listeners too, go back about a year ago to our show. We interviewed TJ Hushmanzada, and we asked him a pointed question about Jermaine Burton, and his answer was telling then and even more so now. And we'll try and put that on our social media and stuff. But even a guy that, was his mentor, so to speak, and that sort of thing, and played for the Bengals and knew how to navigate the franchise and that sort of thing, he couldn't, that wasn't resonating for whatever reason. So Jermaine Burton now, like you said, I think teams are going to probably stay away for the time being. And really maybe see, to your point, maybe see what happens to him in the offseason. Does he rededicate himself to training and all kinds of stuff, whatever issues he may or may not have? Is he getting assistance for that? What is he doing to reinvigorate his football career? But it is not going to be in Cincinnati.
Nope. And this is, Joe Mixon was a completely different person with completely different, background and everything like that. But I remember hearing the Bengals spent a week with him leading up to the draft, sometime in that offseason, getting to know him and just really fully investing in the person that he was and trying to make sure that, he keeps his head on straight and do everything that he needs to. And ultimately, Joe Mixon had a successful career with the Bengals. It didn't necessarily end the way that everyone necessarily wanted to. But for a second round pick, for a guy who wasn't invited to the combine, and a lot of teams had him off their boards, like that was a risk that the Bengals took, and they took the necessary precautions to make sure that they mitigated as much risk as possible, despite investing a second round pick on him. Again, Jermaine Burton's a completely different case, but that's the risk that you take when you draft someone that no one else really wants to deal with. The fact that Nick Saban, right after he was drafted, is like not even necessarily happy for him, just like, you make sure that he like works on himself and this and that. And it's just like, that's a huge red flag for your head coach right after you're drafted on national television, like barely even giving you like an applause. Like it was just the signs were there, and there's a reason why he lasted as long as he did in the draft. And for again, the visual of Zach Taylor just so elated about that pick more than any other pick that he's ever been a part of in that war room. For him to then, not even 2 years later, calmly with a blank face, we're releasing Jermaine Burton. Just what a turn of events, and what an indictment on the whole process of this.
Really, it's a great way to put it. And what a turn of events. You mentioned that the Bengals and their star defensive player were at odds really over the course of the last 2 off seasons. Trey Hendrickson, he had some sort of hip back issue that came to fruition against the Packers. He left that game, returned the following week against the Jets, got it re-aggravated when someone, I can't remember exactly who it was, but he kind of took a late shot. I don't know if it was necessarily a cheap one, but didn't look great upon replay. Regardless, it re-aggravated the situation. Some people are saying maybe a core hernia injury, but now it's been week to week. And so now Adam Schefter of ESPN, I believe, was the first to drop the scoop that Trey Hendrickson John is now going to have surgery on this and is out for at least 6 weeks. Most prognoses have him returning after that and being fine. But after seeing a specialist, which was noted earlier on Monday, and then a little bit later on Monday, it was the scoop was broken that Hendrickson is now going to be definitively unavailable for the Bengals, it would seem, should he follow through with the procedure that was reported.
Right. It's effectively season ending, because if they make the playoffs, he could have a chance to return in like late mid-January. Best case scenario, I don't think we're dealing with a Joe Burrow situation in which, I'll learn a little bit more about this and come back in 3/4 of the time. Now, this is a situation in which an injury has not progressed the way that Hendrickson or the team probably wanted it to. I know that there have been questions about why didn't he see the specialist before this? And I think that's a fair question to ask. Again, I think if they knew that this injury was going to be a lot longer than they expected, he would have been on IR. And it was either misdiagnosed at the start, or they just didn't know enough about it and they wanted to keep him available in case he could come back. Because obviously, if Hendrickson was able to play and he was still on IR, that would have been a disastrous scenario. He's their best player and they need him out there as soon as possible. Now, they're not going to. And yeah, I mean, if you're Trey Hendrickson and you've been presumably fighting and training hard to come back in time, and you come to the realization that I'm probably not going to be anywhere close to 100%, but before the end of the season, they're 4-9. I have no long-term security here. I'm not going to be in a situation. I'm not going to be the guy that's like, this guy gave up on the team. Like, it's just, it is what it is. Like, let's be grown-ups about this. He's a free agent after this year. He didn't get the contract that he wanted. He tried to play this year. He got hurt. He tried to play through the injury. He got hurt again. And this is where they are. And I understand, for a guy who's 31 years old without any long-term security attached to his name, wanting to get as healthy as possible as soon as possible so that he can take a physical in March, presumably with his new team, if that is where this is going to end up. Yep.
And like you said, there's a business side of this. And there is, Trey Hendrickson does have to, as much as he, and this is not this may come off as a knock on him. That's not at all how I mean it, but as much as he espouses about wanting to be a Bengal long-term, wanting to stay in Cincinnati, etc., he also, Trey Hendrickson has to look out for Trey Hendrickson and his health and his future. And that's what makes this whole thing extremely unfortunate, ugly, whatever word that begins with you, I guess, that you want to use. This whole thing has dragged out. He didn't get the long-term contract. And then, of course, they do give him a pay raise. And then finally, as he gets that pay raise, he gets hurt. And then he's trying to get his way back. work his way back into the lineup. It is just not going well. And then the Bengals season is going sideways, if not already there. And so now he says, yeah, and maybe at the behest of the specialist or his agent or everybody, this is the way to go. So it's an unfortunate situation, obviously, when he's injured and probably not going to play the rest of the year and maybe not play for the Bengals again after this. I would, for those saying, oh, the Bengals can franchise tag him and then he can maybe stay another year. I actually think that this is going to be an unfortunate situation where the Bengals kind of thumb their nose at everybody and say, see, this is why we don't sign guys at this age to those big contracts. Even if he appeared to be an outlier before this year in terms of health and production and all that kind of stuff. Unfortunately, I would not be surprised if you start, especially if he goes somewhere else, which I think is very likely at this point. I would not be surprised if the Bengals use that as, reasoning for their whatever approach in free agency, the draft, etc.
Yeah. And I just don't see how at this point this relationship continues. I think there was already frustration from the front office towards Trey, at least a little bit. And again, like every situation is different. They are very old school. They want you to play through injury, and like I don't think it looks the best in their eyes that a guy is opting to get surgery when he could potentially play. That's just my read on the situation. It's not how I view it, but it's how I view a group of individuals who very much, operate like it's still the 20th century with this game. Yeah, I think there was already a hesitancy to commit to him beyond this year, and him being now a year older with this injury attached to his resume with this surgery, that's going to be a question that other teams have to ask in terms of pursuing him in free agency. There was already a very unlikely chance that they were going to compete for his services on the open market. The most likely thing was the franchise tag, and it's going to be about $30 million, I think, still this coming year if they were to do that. I just don't think that they're going to see the value in that after the season that he had, considering that they were already viewing his career on this trajectory, and that's probably how they're going to. Like you said, that's only going to be reinforced based off the last 4 months.
It's going to be their straw man, yeah. Dominic Orsini. I don't know if I've seen that name. Doesn't sound familiar. I don't know if that's a Bengals fan or maybe a Bills fan checking in. But either way, thank you. Bottom line: if Burrow can stay healthy for a whole season, the Bengals are a playoff team. I don't know that I believe that. I based on what we saw yesterday, I don't know that I believe that at this point. What I do want to ask you, John, is if you think whether Burrow was healthy or not, if Trey Hendrickson was healthy and playing at a level that he has been playing at over the course of a handful of years with the Bengals, how much of a difference does that make defensively? They turned a corner late last year, and he really came on late last year too, but I don't even know if him being healthy would have aided the defense a whole bunch just based on other things that we've talked about and we've seen from this group this year.
First of all, 2024 happened when both Trey Hendrickson and Joe Burrow were out there for the entire season, and They didn't make the playoffs. I understand that they won 9 games, and I understand that in some years that can be a wild card team. It won't be a wild card team this year. Like, it's probably going to be a bunch of 10-win teams. Buffalo was like very much not locked in as the 7th seed at 8-4 like a day ago. So like that's just the nature of like a bunch of teams vying for playoff spots. But in this year specifically, if Joe Burrow were presumably staying healthy and he had a normal Joe Burrow year, if Trey Hendrickson played the entire year, maybe the Bengals would be only like 2 games away from the division lead in this case instead of 3 now with the Steelers. Maybe they would be right above 500 instead of 5 games below 500 right now. Maybe in this year specifically, when the AFC North is crap, maybe that's the case. But that is a loser argument, in my opinion, because that's not where you should want to be with this quarterback and with the stars around him. You should want to be so much freaking better than that.
Yeah.
And you should not want to accept just being potentially a playoff team with this guy healthy. And I think that comment just triggers me because I know that's exactly what they're thinking in those offices. And, oh my God.
Our buddy Dan the Man, why did we not onside kick versus Buffalo? Bueller. He asked it earlier, but now I got to pin it because he's got a Ferris Bueller reference in there. So I don't know. Do you have thoughts on that? At this point, it's to me it was you can do that sort of thing, but obviously the 2 turnovers and the defensive collapse are the main storylines. But I understand where the question is coming from.
I think I wasn't like outraged by the decision because there was over 2 minutes left. They had a timeout and they almost got off the field, and
they had him at 3rd and 15.
Yeah, they almost got the field, and they had him at decent. They could have had decent field position. Whereas if they obviously don't recover the onside kick, then the Bills are in a much closer spot to potentially kick a field goal and obviously score a touchdown. Because I think also that matters too. Like the Bills just have the ability to produce explosive plays out of nowhere, and if they didn't recover the onside kick, the odds of them scoring a touchdown is immense. I think the argument for kicking the onside kick though is because it was snowing, and presumably it would have been easier to potentially bounce and recover and everything like that. That's what my friend was texting me about, and I definitely see that logic. It wasn't something where it was like it didn't seem like a completely obvious decision to make, but I was, I guess, more expecting it to be an onside kick than not. But I understood the logic for not doing it.
Yeah, I think I just in general. For me, my head was just kind of spinning after everything that transpired in such a short period of time there. So it's just like, yeah, okay. But let's we're going to talk about the playoff picture, Bengals chances, and maybe what's ahead here. Before we do, this is the Orange and Black Insider Bengals podcast, part of the Believe Podcast Network and the Believe in Cincy podcast channel. We are proudly presented by FOCO, the fans only company, and FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. And you can get our show on your favorite audio streamer as well as on our YouTube channel. One little side note, because I left the banner up here, John, one little side note that is kind of roster news. T. Higgins has now returned to concussion protocol as well. So more great news for the Cincinnati Bengals. And I got to tell you, I'm with a lot of people. I did not like what I saw from him on Sunday, not in a performance perspective, from an injury perspective. There was a point where I think it was just a short while after because he slammed his head twice down, I think the back of his head twice on the turf again, which is how he entered concussion protocol after the Patriots game or during the Patriots game. He was cleared twice by the team or by an independent specialist in the tent and that sort of thing. But I noticed, John, and I don't know if you noticed this as well, but shortly after one of those, I can't remember if it was the first one or the second one, there was kind of a ball that Burrow put right on him and he dropped it. And I'm almost, again, I'm not a speculative guy. I don't like to, try and grab headlines, but I almost wonder if, and granted it was snowy and whatever, but if vision was impacted from something like that, I don't know. Or it could have just been a concentration drop, whatever. The bottom line is in the last 2 games he has played, he's taken 3 big hits, 3 big bounces off the turf with his head. And that is very concerning.
It's very concerning. I think we all kind of assumed the first time that it happened on Sunday, in which he was staying on the ground for a while, like he was going to be out, because it's not just the fact that he likely, suffered another concussion. It was his second concussion in a 14-day span, which is terrifying. To continue to play after that is a testament to his toughness and his willing to play. But at the same time, I don't look at it from like a Bengals perspective. I look at it from like an NFL perspective, and I think there's still a lot of work that needs to be done in terms of taking concussion seriously. And again, like if he says that he passed whatever testing that they conduct inside those blue tents, I'm inclined to believe him. I don't think that anything nefarious was happening. I think in general, the process probably still needs a lot of work because it didn't seem like it very much seemed like he wasn't himself for the majority of the game after that happened, which almost makes the one-handed touchdown that he had at the end of the game all the more crazy. The fact that he was able to gut that out. It's no surprise that the next day he wakes up with concussion-like symptoms because of all the hard hits and the hard falls that he took with his helmet. It was very uncomfortable to watch from that perspective. I don't want it to, and again, like I don't want that to take away from, his pride in terms of being out there and how that's probably still something that has been surrounding him, I think, for the past couple of years in his inability to stay on the field. And I think he took a lot of pride in, I'm a soldier, soldiers take hits. And that's that's definitely how these guys are wired. But at the same time, yes, when it's like that and it's that specific type of circumstances, you would love someone to kind of step in and say, hey, like, let's think about this from like a long-term perspective. This is kind of scary.
Especially when there was a third party involved, right? I mean, that's the whole deal. They got a third party specialist so that your team isn't rushing you out there unnecessarily. And so, that pretty scary stuff. Hope he's okay. Definitely, I would love to see him back on the field, but you don't want to rush him back too soon from something like that. Most definitely. We do have Buffalo checking in here. Keenan 716, go Bills. I was at the game. Burrow played well. Just some bad breaks in that second half once that McDermott defense finally made some plays. So thanks for tuning in, Keenan. Good win by the Bills there. Looked like it was going to go the other way, but that's okay. Let's talk a little bit about the AFC playoff picture, John. You mentioned that the Bengals playoff chances at this point in time, and I want to credit Caleb Noe on Twitter. He's a local sports anchor as well. I think he's with WCPO. I apologize if I missed that. I don't live in that area, so I think that's who he's with. Right. But he does some fantastic breakdowns of scenarios, and he's done this the last 2 years because it's such an ambiguous situation with the Bengals, and they've racked up losses and this sort of thing. Technically, the Cincinnati Bengals still have playoff life, but it's probably hovering around the territory of count that percentage on one hand and have fingers left over type of thing. So it's fun in a way that they are still theoretically alive for the playoffs, but at the same time, I just wonder how much of a psyche damaging loss this last one, because it's one thing to suffer these types of losses and collapses when you have a backup quarterback in there, when you have Joe Flacco in there and that sort of thing. And you guys know I've been gushing about Flacco's performances with the Bengals and well beyond expectations. It's not a knock on him, but it's another when this happens, when you have your guy back, your quarterback is back there. And while the Bengals are alive, they have to win out and they need some help.
Need a lot of help. They need the Steelers to essentially not lose out, but like lose 3 of their final 4 games. The Steelers beating the Ravens makes this a little bit harder, because if the Steelers like beat the Ravens again, then that pretty much secures an AFC North title for them. The Steelers are in the driver's seat, and that's not ideal with the Bengals still having to play the Ravens again. The Steelers like need to lose one of their games against the Dolphins or the Browns. Coincidentally, the Bengals also play those teams as well. The Bengals need to win out and somehow win the division with 8 wins, and it's just not a likely scenario, which is kind of crazy considering the fact that the Bengals have this record despite having a 3-1 record against their own division. And it's like, yeah, that's the easiest path to making the playoffs, is beating your own teams and everything like that. But they only have one win outside of their division, which is like the direct opposite of what like the past couple of years have been like. So 3% chance right now, probably going to be lower at this time next week, or if not completely gone altogether. But yeah, I think part of the deflation, like you said, Anthony, wasn't just the loss. It wasn't just like, with Burrow in there. Like Buffalo is a playoff team, probably. Like they're going to be in the playoffs, and if this team hopes to somehow make it there, you want some confidence that you can beat some of these teams. And I think losing in that fashion to that team in that environment, I think it's also kind of a blow. Like, oh, like we don't really have that juice anymore, because that's a game that in past years with Burrow, they've been able to pull out victories with, and that's how they've been able to advance in the playoffs. And I think that's a pretty damaging blow towards, Zach's job security and just the overall faith that what they're doing is the correct thing to do. Because again, when it happens once in October against a bad team, you can chalk it up as an embarrassing fluke. But when it continues happening and happens against good teams, it's just a sign that you can't compete.
This is the other thing too, and I again, I'm not. This isn't a disparaging remark on the Bills. They're a good team, but I think everybody can kind of admit, even Bills fans that are rational, that they've got some warts. They've got some. They're not a perfect team. They are good, and they have a chance to win many times with Josh Allen under center. But I what I'm kind of getting at is who is good in the AFC. Like I don't even, yeah, the Patriots have a really good record, and maybe they are the real deal, but we've seen Vrabel take good teams into the postseason, be the number 1 seed, and falter. The Chiefs lost last night. What are they, 6-7? And the Chargers are pretty good, but they've had some stretches where you go, what is this team? I guess I'm just, and you mentioned the AFC North is you mentioned the Steelers have a 3-game lead right now over the Bengals. Are the Steelers even good? I mean, who's good? That's the whole frustrating thing about this year, and Burrow getting injured, et cetera, et cetera. We can play the hypothetical game about Joe and Trey like we did a couple minutes ago, but this was a conference ripe for the Bengals to pick at. Granted, hindsight's 2020. You don't know that going into the offseason necessarily, but every team is vulnerable in some way in the AFC, it seems, is kind of what I'm getting at. And I don't know who's truly really good. I guess I trust the Bills at this point more than, say, the Patriots, just because of experience. And now if the Chiefs don't make it, Allen may not have to face Mahomes in the postseason, that sort of thing. But it's just kind of like a lot of, I don't want to say mediocre, but it's like, yeah, they're okay. They're pretty good, I guess. They're good. It's a lot of teams with issues.
And then the Colts obviously just lost their quarterback to an Achilles injury. And I think Riley Leonard has to step in because Anthony Richardson is still dealing with an eye injury that's been really underreported and potentially scary. The best teams in the NFL are probably just in the NFC. The Rams are the most complete team in the NFL right now. The Packers are probably up there as well. The Seahawks have a phenomenal defense. The Texans have a phenomenal defense. The Texans have as good of a defense as the Bills have an offense, but the Texans have an average offense and the Bills have league average defense, right? So there's no complete teams necessarily in the AFC aside from the Patriots. And again, if the Patriots do make it out of the AFC and into the Super Bowl, that would be a phenomenal story for them because of how much inexperience is on the team. It'd be kind of reminiscent of the Bengals in 2021, right? Drake Mays having a 2021 Burrow type year, not a rookie head coach by any means, but a first year technically head coach. If you want to label Mike Vrabel as that with that organization, and just a balanced team overall. But yeah, I would say that the powers to beware are probably in the NFC right now. And when you're talking about a Bengals team in which if they could just get in, maybe they can make some noise. That was the conversation last year with how well they were playing. Unfortunately, they're just not at this moment playing their best football right now, and that just kind of takes away that argument a little bit.
Any faith, I mean, because this could be, and we've said this a bunch of times, this loss to the Bills for the Bengals, and maybe you purge the distraction that is Jermaine Burton off the roster. You finally have some clarity on Trey Hendrickson and what his future is. Well, I mean, his 2025 future with the team is or isn't going to be. Is there any, with Burrow at the helm and all of that, is there any faith that this is going to be gut check time, bounce back moment, or are there just, in your eyes, too many examples at this point of you just can't trust this team to close, whether it's the defense, whether it's a late turnover by the quarterback or somebody else? Is it just are there too many examples at this point that they just can't close?
I think it stinks because they just haven't. I mean, it's basic as hell to say this, but they just haven't won a lot recently. They have 4 wins, and 2 of them were in the first 2 weeks of the year. They beat the Steelers at home on Thursday Night Football in October. They beat the Ravens on Thanksgiving. That both wins countered out 4-game losing streaks. They have just a lot of familiarity with not being able to close. And I think regardless of how well Burrow is playing, there's just not a stable foundation of this year's team knowing who they are. And I think the identity that they tried to carry over from last year in terms of the offense being the lead, just having the defense be a little bit better, it's just failed. And I think a lot of people realize that on the team. They're going to keep trying, I'm assuming. I don't think anyone is necessarily
right.
But yeah, the confidence in this team finding ways to win at this time of year, I think was severely shaken by what happened in Buffalo, and it's going to take a really strong, like you said, gut check to really turn that around.
And I mean, and granted, it was a big game. The media had been hyping up the return of Joe Burrow because of his performance on Thanksgiving night, getting that big win. And can the Bengals make a run? Can the Bengals make a run? And then they had it in their hands and ended up losing. What is of those remaining games, if you include this Sunday, that appears to be the most difficult that they would have had on the schedule. I don't know, man. I mean, I think they've got it in them, particularly with Joe Burrow to make it interesting. But the lack of closing things, and we'll get out of here in a couple minutes, but the lack of that closing mentality, because that's Burrow's DNA, right? Closer, shut the door. Let's close it. That has gone out of the window for a number of reasons. How much of that do you pin on? I mean, I know we all say, ultimately front office is the responsible party for the successes and failures of the team, but how much of that do you pin on the coaching staff?
A lot, a ton, if not all of it. It's just like that. Was that not just? It's not the whole point of the season, I guess. It was a big year for Zach Taylor to prove his worth as head coach and attaching himself to a defensive coordinator that he put his trust in. And for the results to be this, like, it's just, I don't know how you can look at anything differently aside from the people or the person who puts together this roster. And it's just it's a collective failure of identifying where the team needed to go. And the vision was set in January, and it has successfully failed. It's an oxymoron. It has failed tremendously in December. That's just what it is.
Ross Incognito says, I think I might crash out until September 26th. Yeah, maybe hibernate, right? Isn't that that's a thing? That's a winter thing, right? MB is making a run at Mr. Whisper as Mr. Generosity, or I don't know if MB is a man or woman, maybe Mrs. Generosity. The Rams literally traded their whole future and built a second contending team. Who remembers when they said it was house money and this young team will compete for championships? I mean, at this point, I've talked about this. I think you and I have talked about it a little bit. I know we've talked about it on other shows. It's almost like, okay, now that you have your three offensive stars signed long-term, do you now then, especially when you're making picks like McKinley Jackson and Jermaine Burton in the third round, and they're not doing anything for you? I mean, do you mortgage, and this is not in the Bengals' DNA at all, but do you mortgage the draft picks and just kind of say, hey, we're going to trade for players. We're going to trade for guys that we know can come in at these spots. I would think about it because you have core pieces. And the draft is a crapshoot, and with the Bengals and their scouting department, it's even more of a crapshoot than with most other teams. So that mentality of kind of mortgaging the future, yet somehow, like you said, the Rams are one of the best teams in the league. And even though it's like sometimes you're like, oh my gosh, the Rams are finally picking. It's like the fourth round because they've given up all these pieces to get guys, and it works for them. They have the veteran quarterback, they have the solid head coach. They've got some pieces around. They sprinkle in draft picks and guys that are depth pieces, but they tend to hit on defensive linemen and other guys.
Oh my God, the Rams have the hit rate that the Bengals would absolutely dream of in the NFL draft, especially recently. Like,
yeah.
Jared Verse and Puka Nacua weren't like there by trades. Like those are draft picks, right? Kobe Turner, Brian Young, Braden Fisk, like Blake Corum. Terrence Ferguson, like this team that you see now for the Rams, obviously is still coached by Sean McVay and quarterbacked by Matthew Stafford, but it was rebuilt through the draft and without spending a lot of cash. I think they're like one of the fewest. I think they've spent the lowest amount of cash over the last 3 years ever since that Super Bowl team. And yeah, like that was the reality that they accepted after quote unquote mortgaging their future, but they have the ingredients to rebuild a team the way that the Bengals believe that they had, after they went to the Super Bowl. And I'm sure that they felt righteous in terms of how they got to the Super Bowl compared to the Rams. But the fact that the Rams have now build a better team 4 years later, it definitely should sting the Bengals in terms of like, yeah, we just beat you out of your own process, and we beat you originally by doing something differently. So
they rebuilt. Yeah, when I said mortgaging the draft picks, that was kind of their last run, right? They did a lot of veteran stuff, and then they did get some nice hits in the draft. I mean, gosh, they pivoted in Nakua from Cooper Kupp, and granted, Kupp had some injury stuff towards the end of his departure from the Rams there, but I mean that's why they moved away from Kupp. They're like, this Nakua kid is awesome. So they've done it a couple of different ways, and you gotta credit them. I love this one right here. What was this one? Keenan again, the Bills fan. I feel the same way. What's a GM, John? I don't know what a GM is. Do you know what that is? We don't.
General Motors.
Yeah, exactly. Cincinnati doesn't have one of those. All right, so let's get the heck on out of here. My lights may click off on me anyway, so as they tend to do. Let's drop the mic and get on out of here, buddy. What do you got for us on the way out of the door?
I did something kind of stupid on Saturday, and I made a Skyline Chili Mimosa thanks to the fine folks at Andre, the official sparkling wine of the NFL. Anthony's eyes are completely wide.
Wait.
Because he has no idea what I'm talking about. Okay, so let's back up here a little bit. The fine folks at Andre ran a contest, and they basically said, like, hey, we have 32 ideas for different team-themed mimosa drinks, right? And the Bengals won this contest, and the concept was a Skyline Chili Mimosa. And the ingredients to make this are Andre sparkling wine, cooked pasta water, cinnamon, chili powder, topped with shredded sharp cheddar cheese. That's the ingredients to make it from scratch. And I did. And I drank the whole thing. My stomach has felt better, finally. It was a rough, 3 hours after that.
How many did you have? How many did you have? This one?
I had the one. I had the one for the bit. But you will not have to make it yourself. They will come in these bottles in which they are packaged, and you could just pour it yourself. And honestly, Anthony, the first sip was not that bad. It was very odd. It was very weird. The texture of the cheese on top was completely bizarre. There were definitely diminishing returns the more I drink it. And yeah, maybe you want to stop after a couple sips, but I would be very interested to see the actual finished product and not just, again, me making it from scratch with these raw ingredients. But it was quite fun. And shout out to Andre for sending me a cooler, the sparkling wine, the ingredients. They overnighted it. It was really cool. So yeah,
how did you link up with them? Yeah, how'd you link up with them?
Oh, to peek behind the curtain for everyone else, and Anthony knows exactly what I'm talking about. You get these random email blasts, from random PR people, and it was like, check out the official, the Skyline Chili 3 mimosa. Like, I have to click on this. I have to see what this is about. And I just reached out and said, yeah, I'd be interested in, doing this and whatever, and then making it into content. That's what happened.
There you go. We may have to have you do one on air, man. That it's like the crazy. You see some of these restaurants come out with like crazy Bloody Marys. They have like cheeseburgers on them and all kinds of stuff. And you're like, is this a drink or is this a full blown brunch? This is ridiculous. Man, that just sounds crazy to me. I don't have much more. I guess last show we talked about Ken Anderson kind of getting whittled down to the finalist list of the senior list of the Pro Football Hall of Fame. You saw a guy get in today for the Baseball Hall of Fame, Jeff Kent, who was one of the best hitting second basemen in baseball history. Definitely not known for his defense. Let's be honest about that. But you kind of hope that those are the kinds of players where you say, this person was this good, whether it was one element, multiple elements, what have you, to get into the Hall of Fame. Ken Anderson deserves it. Willie Anderson deserves it. Corey Dillon deserves, some love for the Pro Football Hall of Fame too. So unfortunately, the Bengals not winning does not help some more attention to those causes. But at any rate, that just, I saw some stuff on different social media timelines about Jeff Kent today, and he's a good player. He's a very good player, no doubt about it. I remember growing up watching him and stuff, but, it kind of reminded me a little bit of Kenny, like, hey, if this guy can get in to the Baseball Hall of Fame, not knocking him, but good player. Ken Anderson should be in the Hall of Fame for sure, and I want to keep banging that drum.
For as many problems as I have with the NFL Hall of Fame, the MLB Hall of Fame is definitely up there in terms of very corrupt organizations.
Yeah,
the process of getting like maybe one guy in a year, and just the pettiness of some of the voters in general. Like that's a problem I have with Hall of Fames, but the MLB is definitely up there. So
and biases, team biases, the whole deal. It's crazy that you said the pettiness of players, and you can think whatever you want about the guys in the steroid era that perform. This is a whole different topic for another time, but I saw someone posted some sort of like amount of votes that these guys, I think these guys have been waiting for a while. Kent got enough votes to get in. And like the guys that got less than the bare minimum votes are guys like Barry Bonds and Roger Clemens, and guys where you're like, in any other world, they're Hall of Famers. But because of that tarnished reputation that they gave themselves, obviously the voters are just not going to let them in. So anyway, that's going to do it for us on the Orange and Black Insider. Our thanks to FanDuel, America's #1 sports book, as well as FOCO, the fans only company, for sponsoring our show, the Orange and Black Insider. Believe in Cincy podcast channel is the channel, and our YouTube channel. We're on X, all kinds of different stuff. Go again and check out that Hushmanzada interview now that the Burton news has dropped. It's back in our interviews with Bengals playlist. Go check that out, because it becomes more and more interesting now that the news of Burton being released by the Bengals has come out. John, you're the man, buddy. Appreciate it. I know we went late, but appreciate you as always. We'll try and get back on later this week if we have to talk about this team. Good God. All right, dude. Take care, buddy.
Peace.